As usual, Harvey was sitting in his recliner, beer in hand, watching a baseball game on the big screen. After dinner, Betsy went upstairs. He had no idea what she was doing, nor did he care. To him, it was just another regular night at home. However, shortly before sunset, the doorbell rang. Before Harvey could get up, Betsy called down from upstairs. "Harvey, could you get that, please?" "Of course, I was going to do it anyway," he replied. He walked to the door and opened it to find a well-dressed man standing there. Someone Harvey didn't recognize. "Yes? Can I help you?" "I hope you're not here to sell anything," Harvey said. "No, I'm here to pick up Betsy." "For what?" Harvey asked, confused. "We have a date." Harvey's eyes widened in shock. "You're saying you and my wife, Betsy, have a date?" "Yes," the man replied calmly. Harvey stood there, trying to process what was happening. "I'll call her." He turned toward the stairs and shouted, "Betsy, your suitor is here." He expected her to yell back something like, "What are you talking about?" or to come down and clarify the situation. Instead, she replied, "Tell him I'll be right there." Harvey froze, stunned, as he tried to make sense of it all. Moments later, Betsy came into the living room. She was wearing a short evening dress that revealed ample cleavage, her face adorned with dramatic makeup. "Betsy," Harvey said, his voice rising with frustration. "What the hell is going on here? Married women do not go on dates with other men. Period. I'm sick of it," Betsy snapped, jabbing her finger into his chest for emphasis. "I'm tired of spending every evening watching you drink beer and stare at some boring sport on TV. The most interaction I get from you is a burp or a fart, and you don't even bother to apologize anymore. When was the last time we did something exciting? If you can't give me attention or at least a little fun, I'll find someone who can." She grabbed her purse and marched toward the door. "Don't wait up for me. If I'm lucky, I won't be back until morning," she said, slamming the door behind her. Betsy got into the car and told the driver to drive. Once they were a safe distance from home, the driver stopped, and the two burst into laughter. "I wish I had a photo of his face," Betsy exclaimed. "It was priceless. If that doesn't get him off his lazy ass and acting like a normal person, I don't know what will." "Don't you think this might just make him angrier and make things worse?" the driver asked. "I doubt it. He's probably sitting there, confused and wondering what just happened. I'll be back before he gets too upset. I don't think he'd jump to divorce that quickly, and honestly, I'm willing to take the risk. Although," she added, hesitating, "I probably shouldn't have said that part about not coming home until morning. Well, too late now. The way our marriage is going, I think I'd rather get a divorce than continue like this. Damn him. I love that idiot, but I just wish he'd care more about me and us." "Should we go back now?" the driver asked. "Yeah, let's just drive around the block and head home. I'll check on him and see if my little stunt had any effect." After driving around the area for a while, Betsy and her companion pulled back into the driveway and parked. To her disappointment, Harvey didn't rush outside to confront her. When she walked into the house, she found the TV still on, but Harvey was nowhere to be seen. She quickly searched the ground floor and then ran upstairs. He wasn't there either. His phone was sitting on the nightstand, alongside his wedding ring. A sinking feeling hit her as she noticed some of his personal belongings were missing. Panicking, Betsy ran downstairs and told her friend, "He's gone." She checked the garage, but his car was missing too. "He disappeared?" the man asked. "Where do you think he went?" "He's probably gone to the bar to get drunk, or worse, he might have checked into a motel for the night," Betsy replied nervously. "I imagine him sulking like a little child. He'll pay for it when he comes back and realizes this was all a joke." Then again, she paused, trying to sound confident. Maybe his leaving is for the best. If he feels guilty enough about making me resort to this, I'm fine with letting him stew in it for a while longer. But Harvey didn't come home that night or the next morning. By midday the following day, Betsy couldn't stand it anymore. She called Harvey's office and asked to be connected to him. "Barbara, please connect me to my husband," she said. "I'm sorry, Betsy, but nothing's going to work out for you today," Barbara replied, her tone confused and annoyed. "Harvey came in this morning acting like a completely different person. He told me to shut up and listen. He's never spoken to me like that before. Then he said he was taking the day off to handle personal matters. He even asked me who handles our company's health insurance. I gave him the name of the HR rep who deals with it, and that seemed to satisfy him. After that, he left without another word, no thanks or anything. I don't know what's going on, but this is nothing like the Harvey I know." "Harvey, what happened to him? Did someone close to him die or something?" "No, I'm what happened to him. I pulled a trick on him and it backfired horribly. Once I find him and apologize, grovel even, I hope things can go back to normal." Betsy called the HR department. "Human Resources. This is Rhonda." "Hi, Rhonda. This is Betsy. I'd like to speak with Sylvia. She's currently in orientation with a new employee. Can anyone else help you? Maybe? Can anyone tell me what Harvey Strickland did in your HR department today? I can check his file, but I'll need his permission to share any information. I'm his wife. Can't you tell me anything? Well, I can look at your health insurance coverage." After a pause, Rhonda continued, "Wait a minute. This is a coincidence. We were going to contact you today anyway. You should receive official notice in the mail soon. You're no longer covered under your husband's health insurance. However, you can keep your coverage for 180 days if you pay the required fees yourself. That's the only thing he changed." Betsy was stunned. She managed a trembling, "Thank you," and hung up the phone. Tears welled in her eyes. Why did Harvey remove me from his health insurance? Then it hit her. She immediately opened her laptop and logged into their online banking accounts. Half the money was gone from both their checking and savings accounts. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's divorcing me." Panic set in. Betsy couldn't decide what to do next. Just as she was trying to calm herself, her phone rang. It was Larry, their life insurance agent and family friend. "Larry? What's going on?" she asked shakily. "Betsy, can you tell me what's happening? Harvey came by this morning. He canceled the automatic payout on your life insurance policy and changed the beneficiary to your daughters. He said no money should go to you. Also, he transferred all future withdrawals for the insurance payments to a new account. He was adamant this is how he wanted things to be. I'll have to send you a formal notice about the change in beneficiary and the termination of your benefits. Betsy, are you two getting a divorce?" Betsy's voice cracked. I think so. Thank you, Larry. I can't explain right now." Larry sighed. "I'm sorry to hear this. Please come see me soon so we can discuss your options. Take care, Betsy." Before she could catch her breath, another call came in. This time it was Doug, their lawyer and next-door neighbor. "Hello, Doug," Betsy answered, her voice barely audible. "Betsy, this is Doug. Can you tell me what's going on? Harvey came to my office this morning and updated his will. He's leaving everything to the kids and nothing to you. He also removed you as someone who could make medical decisions for him if needed. When I asked why, he refused to explain and said he didn't care if I told you or not. He even asked me for a referral to a family lawyer. Betsy, are you guys getting a divorce?" Betsy swallowed hard. "I don't know, Doug. I'm trying to fix things, but I think it's too late. I'm sorry, Betsy. Marilyn and I both think very highly of you two. I hope you can work this out. Let me know if I can help in any way. Thanks, she said weakly and hung up. Just as she started to cry, her phone rang again. This time it was her twin daughters who were away at college. Mom, what the hell is going on? One of them demanded. Yeah. The other chimed in. Dad called us out of nowhere and started ranting about you. He said you've been dating and sleeping with other men. Then he said he's taking some time away to date other people before filing for divorce. He also told us he's taken care of all our future college expenses. We tried to ask him questions, the first daughter added, but he just ignored us. He told us he loved us and hung up. Mom, the second daughter said, her voice trembling. We're scared Dad might hurt himself. What happened? Why is he so depressed? Betsy burst into tears. I'm the idiot who made him depressed. I wanted to pull a stunt to wake him up and make him enjoy life with me again. I pretended to go on a date with another man. I was gone for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes. And when I came back, he was gone. Now he's done all of this. I'm trying to find him and stop this madness. Please find him, Mom, her daughters begged before hanging up. Before Betsy could think of her next step, another call came in. Her heart raced. Maybe it's Harvey. Hello? She answered quickly. Betsy, this is your mother-in-law, Doris. What the hell is going on? Harvey called us, crying like a baby. He said you've been sleeping around with a group of men at some nightclub. He sounded drunk, so I wasn't sure if he was telling the truth. But then he said he was going to fix the problem by giving you your freedom. The worst part was when he thanked me and his father for raising him right. He apologized for betraying his upbringing and said goodbye. Betsy, I didn't like the tone of his voice. He hung up before we could ask anything else. When we tried calling back, he didn't answer. Betsy, I'm scared he might do something stupid. Through tears, Betsy tried to explain. Doris, I just wanted to get him out of his rut. I wanted him to stop being so distant and depressed, to enjoy life with me again. I never meant for it to go this far. Now I think he's divorcing me, and I'm terrified he might hurt himself. I'm doing everything I can to find him and stop this. Doris sighed deeply. Betsy, you better pray you find him before it's too late. But I can't even reach him to talk to him, Betsy cried. Her mother-in-law's voice turned icy. So it's your fault my son is planning to kill himself? Let me tell you something. If Harvey dies, I will hold you personally responsible. The call ended with a loud click, leaving Betsy stunned and unable to think clearly. She frantically called every local hotel and motel, but Harvey wasn't listed as a guest at any of them. Desperate, she contacted the police, trying to file a missing persons report. She told them she feared Harvey was suicidal, but the officers explained that no action could be taken until he had been missing for 24 hours. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Betsy took sleeping pills to calm herself and force sleep to come. The thought of Harvey dying haunted her, and she briefly considered the unthinkable, ending her own life if he was truly gone. But she quickly shook off the idea, remembering she knew the combination to the safe where Harvey kept his pistol and ammunition. That thought gave her some grim relief. The next morning, she woke up groggy and turned on the TV. As she mindlessly flipped through channels, a breaking news segment stopped her cold. The local news was broadcasting a live interview from the scene of an accident. This is Lamar Jackson, reporting live for TV3 News, the reporter began. It appears Bender's Curve has claimed another victim, or victims, last night. We're here with State Police Sergeant Kaner. Sergeant, can you tell us exactly what happened? The camera panned to the officer, who adjusted his hat before speaking. It looks like a vehicle drove off the cliff at high speed. It managed to break through one of the strongest reinforced barriers. The driver was either extremely unlucky or deliberate. At the moment, Given the lack of skid marks, we suspect the driver either lost consciousness, was under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or may have intentionally driven off the cliff. How did you even know there was an accident? The reporter asked. We received a call from a motorist driving in the opposite direction, Sergeant Kaner replied. The camera cut to a young man being interviewed by the reporter. Young man, what's your name? I'm Sean Carpenter, the man replied with a grin. Am I on TV? Hi, Mom. He smiled broadly and waved at the camera. Sean, tell us what you saw, the reporter urged. Well, I was driving home late last night when I saw this big truck heading toward me. It swerved a little and then suddenly crossed into my lane. I slammed on the brakes, and just as quickly, it veered sharply to the right, hit the guardrail and went off the cliff. Can you describe the truck? Sure. It was a red Ford F-150, probably late 90s. It had a Western Kentucky Mountain Man sticker on the rear window. Did you see the driver? Not clearly. The truck's headlights were on, and I only caught a glimpse of the man behind the wheel. I don't think there were any passengers. That's all I know. Thank you, the reporter said, turning back to Sergeant Kaner. Sergeant, have you sent a team to recover the vehicle? We don't know for certain what it was that broke through the barrier, but based on Mr. Carpenter's account, we believe it was a truck. From here, we can't see anything down the cliffside. Unfortunately, our search and rescue team is currently tied up with efforts in another part of the state. I don't know when they'll be available to investigate this scene. But what if someone is still alive down there and needs medical attention? The reporter pressed. Then they'd be witnessing a real miracle, Sergeant Kaner said grimly. No one could survive a fall like that onto the rocks below. I wouldn't risk the lives of unqualified personnel to climb down there just to confirm what we already suspect. We'll have to wait for the rescue team. Betsy didn't need to wait to guess what had happened or who the victim was. As soon as she heard the description of the red Ford F-150 with the WK Mountain Man sticker, she began sobbing uncontrollably. The phone started ringing, but she ignored it, consumed by her grief. For 3 hours, Betsy cried alone in the house until her twin daughters burst through the door. They had driven home from college after their calls to her went unanswered. Their grandmother had called them, hysterically sharing the news she'd seen on TV about the red truck. Despite the lack of a confirmed body, they were almost certain it was their father. Mom, one of the twins said gently, the phone's been ringing non-stop. Do you want me to answer it? Betsy nodded weakly. The older twin picked up the phone and handed it to her. The caller ID displayed the name of a law firm. Betsy reluctantly answered. Hello, this is Betsy Strickland, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Mrs. Strickland, my name is Chris Andrews. I'm an attorney at the same firm where your friend Doug works. I represent your husband in his divorce proceedings. I wouldn't normally call you about this, but Doug convinced me it was important. Betsy's stomach dropped. What's this about? Andrews sighed. I was contacted by the Riverton Police Department in Caldwell County. They responded to a robbery at a local motel. The victim suffered a severe head injury, had his wallet and keys stolen, and was rushed to the emergency room for surgery. The hospital put him into a medically induced coma to relieve pressure on his brain. The only identification he had was a motel room key. When officers searched the room, they found a divorce agreement with your name on it. That's why they called me. Betsy's heart raced as the attorney continued. Your husband instructed me to handle the divorce proceedings because he didn't want you to have to deal with him directly. I must tell you, Mrs. Strickland, that you were not named as a beneficiary in his future plans. Betsy could barely process the words. He's alive. Yes, ma'am, but he's in critical condition. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. If there's anything I can do to help, Betsy hung up before he could finish, her hands trembling. Her daughters rushed to her side, their faces filled with concern. "Mom, what is it? What's going on?" Through her tears, Betsy managed to choke out the words. "Your father's alive, but he's hurt. He's hurt badly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Strickland, but under the very clear verbal and written instructions given to me by Mr. Strickland, you are not permitted to visit him in the hospital," the lawyer said. "Your children, however, may visit him, but only with my approval." "What? He's my husband. Of course, I can see him," Betsy exclaimed, her voice rising in frustration. "I truly am sorry, but the mandate he signed explicitly gives me, and only me, the authority to make decisions regarding his medical care and the divorce proceedings. I must follow his last verbal instructions. If you wish to fight this, I recommend you hire a lawyer immediately." Betsy's voice trembled. "Wasn't the divorce canceled because of his condition?" "No, ma'am. I was given strict instructions to continue with the divorce proceedings under any circumstance. I don't think he could have foreseen the robbery and coma, but the actions he set in motion remain valid. So, all the financial, insurance, and beneficiary changes he made can't be reversed?" "That's correct. Those changes were legally completed, and there is no indication, written or otherwise, that he wished to cancel them. Of course, given his condition, no new evidence can arise at this time." "This is absurd," Betsy cried. "I deceived my husband into thinking I was going on a date with another man. It was a stupid prank to get his attention. But by the time I came back to tell him it was a joke, he was gone. He got rid of his phone, so I couldn't even explain it to him. There's no reason for the divorce. No reason for all the drastic steps he took. I understand how you feel," the lawyer said carefully, "but I must follow what Mr. Strickland instructed me to do. His written and verbal orders are binding. Tomorrow, as he requested, you will be officially served with divorce papers at work. Once you hire a lawyer, they can contact me about the next steps. I don't care what you say. He's my husband, and I'm going to see him whether you like it or not. Mrs. Strickland, you should know that the envelope you'll receive tomorrow also contains a restraining order. You are to stay at least 1,000 feet away from him. In his petition, he stated that he wants to give you the chance to be with the man you truly want. I'm sorry, but these are his wishes." Betsy hung up, overwhelmed. She explained the situation to her daughters, who were equally shocked and disbelieving. "I'm going to the hospital no matter what they say," Betsy insisted. Her daughters agreed to accompany her. At the hospital, they encountered another obstacle: the hospital's strict COVID restrictions. No visitors were allowed for patients except in the intensive care unit, ICU, and even then only one visitor was permitted for 10 minutes every 2 hours. Frustrated, Betsy and her daughters returned home without seeing Harvey. By the time Harvey was transferred to the ICU, the restraining order had already been processed. Only one of the daughters was allowed to visit him, but since he was unconscious, there was little they could do. A few days later, the mountain search and rescue team located the truck. It was assumed the robber was the person found dead behind the wheel. Harvey's wallet was recovered, but several $100s of the $6,000 cash he'd been carrying were missing. They also found several bottles of rare Kentucky bourbon in the truck, one of which was half empty. The tragedy left Betsy financially strained. Harvey had forgotten to deposit his paycheck into their joint account, which covered the mortgage and other bills. Desperate, Betsy hired a lawyer who successfully petitioned the court to grant her access to half the remaining funds in the account. Finally, it was time to bring Harvey out of his medically induced coma. When he awoke, the doctors discovered he had temporary amnesia. Linda, one of the twins, brought family photos and shared stories in an attempt to jog his memory, but nothing worked. He didn't even recognize his lawyer, who held his power of attorney. In his current condition, Harvey wasn't considered competent enough to lift the restraining order or make any legal decisions. When Harvey began to regain his faculties, the hospital conducted a memory test to assess his recovery. Realizing what they were doing, Harvey decided to pretend he still had amnesia. He was told his daughters wanted to see him, and Carol, the other twin, was the first to visit. "Who are you?" Harvey asked, feigning confusion. "Dad, it's me, Carol, one of your daughters. You were attacked and went into a coma. We've been waiting for you to wake up." "We?" Harvey asked. "Who else?" "Linda and I. And Mom. I have a wife?" he asked, sounding genuinely confused. "Yes, you do," Carol said gently. "Why isn't she here?" he asked. "She's not allowed to come," Carol replied hesitantly. "You two had a misunderstanding, and there's a restraining order against her." Harvey's face fell. "Oh my God, does she really want to harm me?" "No, Dad. She would never harm you. The misunderstanding was about something she did to try and get your attention. She pretended to go on a date with another man. But before she could explain it was a joke, you left. You started the divorce process before she could clarify." Harvey frowned, thinking it over. "How do I know she didn't actually go on a date?" "She says she didn't, Dad," Carol explained. "It was just a prank. She wanted you to think she was going out, so you'd take her seriously." Harvey's brow furrowed. "So, she lied to me?" "Yes, but nothing." "A lie is a lie," Harvey interrupted. "How can I trust anything she says after that?" "I may not remember you or her," Harvey said to his daughter Linda. "But I'm not a fool. I have to assume I took action to protect myself." "Sorry, miss, but your 10 minutes are up. I need to rest now." 2 hours later, his other daughter, Carol, arrived to visit him. "I talked to you earlier, didn't I?" Harvey asked. "No," Carol replied gently. "That was my twin sister, Linda. I'm Carol. Don't you recognize me?" Harvey shook his head. "I'm sorry, not yet. You and your sister are very attractive young women. Were we on good terms? I understand that your mother and I were separated." "Yes, we were on good terms," Carol reassured him. "Mom played a prank on you to get your attention, but before she could explain it was a joke. You were attacked and suffered a head injury. You started the divorce process before you even knew the truth. Dad, you have to stop this. It's all a misunderstanding." Harvey sighed. "I don't know what to do. I don't know if you're my daughter or not. I don't know who my wife is, or if I even have a wife. I don't think I should do anything until I get my memory back. If it ever does come back. Do I have a lawyer?" "You actually have 2 lawyers, one for regular cases and one for the divorce," Carol explained. "You gave the divorce attorney permission to proceed. Maybe if I talk to him, it will help jog my memory," Harvey suggested. "Can you contact him and ask him to visit me?" "Of course," Carol said quickly. "Anything to help you regain your memory. But, Dad, can you please let Mom visit you? It's killing her that she can't see you and apologize." "I don't think I would feel safe around her," Harvey said, his tone firm. "Maybe later." Later that day, Harvey's family law attorney, Chris Andrews, came to visit him. "Mr. Strickland, I'm Chris Andrews, your family law attorney. Do you remember me? Is everything we talk about confidential?" Harvey asked. "Undoubtedly," Andrews assured him. Harvey's voice dropped, and his tone shifted. "Fine. I don't have any amnesia. I'm pretending. I'm trying to figure out what to do about the divorce. What I remember is that I told you to make sure she got enough so she could move on without me." "That's correct. She's been served and she's hired a lawyer," Andrews replied. "Do you want to terminate the divorce proceedings?" "No and no," Harvey said decisively. Can you investigate her claim that she didn't go on a date? I need to know if she's telling the truth. I can hire a private investigator on your behalf if you'd like, Andrews offered. Do it. Harvey continued pretending to have amnesia, ignoring his daughter's pleas to reconcile with their mother. He waited for the report from the private investigator. A few days later, Andrews returned with the findings. According to the detectives, there isn't enough evidence to prove whether she went on a date or not. The man she was with swears nothing happened, but he's married and may be afraid to tell the truth. It's ultimately up to you whether you believe her. I was afraid of this, Harvey said grimly. Thanks for the update. I think it's time for me to recover my memory now. Let's continue with the divorce. When Carol visited later that day, she was the first person he addressed by name. Carol. Her eyes widened. Dad, you remember me? Harvey nodded. Yes, my memories are coming back now, including the night of your mother's betrayal or deception, depending on what you believe. A few days later, Harvey agreed to meet with Betsy. She entered the room, her face tear-streaked and filled with hope. After a long, emotional hug, Betsy began to explain. Harvey, it was a prank. A stupid, sneaky prank to get your attention and make you fight for me. Doug and I only drove around the block, but by the time we got back, you were gone. How do I know that's true? Harvey asked coldly. I can get Doug to come here and explain, Betsy said desperately. He was the one who helped me pull it off. So I'm supposed to take the word of the man you went on a date with to convince me you didn't cheat on me? Sorry, but this dog doesn't hunt. I tried to call you, but you left your phone at home. I sat waiting for you all night, but you never came back, Betsy pleaded. Was anyone with you while you waited? Doug stayed for a couple of hours and then left. I'm sure he'll vouch for me, Betsy insisted. I waited for your call until the next day. That's when I called you at the office and learned you'd taken a scorched earth approach to my fake date. You looked like you couldn't wait to get rid of me. Why wouldn't I? Harvey shot back. You told me to my face that you were going to deceive me. You said you wanted another man who had the nerve to stand in front of me, in my house. I was devastated. But because I loved you, I wanted to give you what you wanted as soon as possible. Besides, after what you did, I no longer wanted to be married to you. You broke our marriage vows, Betsy. Harvey, I don't want a divorce, Betsy said, her voice trembling. I didn't plan to cheat on you. I never did. I just wanted to wake you up and bring some life back into our marriage. I chose the wrong way to do it, and I'm so sorry. Please stop the divorce. Let's go back to our life together. I love you. Harvey's expression didn't soften. Even if what you're saying is true, and I don't believe it, you played a cruel, vile joke on me. I don't know if I can stay married to a woman who does that. Tears welled in Betsy's eyes. Harvey, please. I've made up my mind, Harvey interrupted. I'll continue with the divorce and move into my own apartment. It's time to move on. When Harvey was finally released from the hospital, Betsy pleaded one last time. Harvey, this is such a waste of money. You have a home and a bed. I'll move to another room in the house if that's what it takes to make things work. Please, come back home. Harvey was unmoved. Visiting time is over. I want to see my daughters now. Betsy was escorted out of the ward. The twins, Carol and Linda, tried their best to support their mother's case, but neither of them could clearly explain how much time Betsy had spent with Doug that night, so their pleas didn't matter to Harvey. When Harvey checked out of the hospital, he moved into an apartment close to his workplace. The divorce proceedings continued until Betsy's lawyer requested mandatory counseling for the couple. 12 sessions together. Harvey didn't object, so the sessions began. In their first session, Betsy spoke first, her voice trembling with emotion. "I love my husband very much. We had a wonderful marriage and raised 2 amazing daughters together. I think empty nest syndrome hit him harder than it did me. I wanted to fill that void by spending more time together, doing new things, and making memories beyond just existing in the same house. But Harvey, he seemed to drift away from our marriage. Our life didn't change even when the girls left. It felt like nothing mattered to him anymore." Her voice cracked as she continued. "I decided to shake him up, to get his attention so he'd focus on me and our relationship. I convinced a male friend from work to help me with what I called shock therapy. One evening, I pretended to go on a date with him. We drove around the block so I could come back and tell Harvey it was a joke, something to make him realize how much our marriage mattered. But when I returned, just 10 minutes later, he was gone. I didn't have the chance to explain." She wiped her tears. "The next day, I called his office and found out he'd already taken steps to divorce me. A few days later, I learned he'd been robbed and was in a coma. When he woke up, he refused to believe that my fake date was just a ruse. He's been pushing for divorce ever since. I apologize for my actions, and I beg him to give me a second chance." The counselor turned to Harvey. "Harvey, what's your summary of what happened?" Harvey took a deep breath, his tone cold and measured. "She's accurate in some of what she said, but she conveniently left out a few important details. When her so-called boyfriend showed up, she didn't just tell me she was going on a date. She also told me, despite my objections, that she hoped to spend the night with him. At that moment, I knew our marriage was dead." His voice hardened. "I assumed the failure of our marriage was my fault, so I decided to leave. I left my home and hers so she could have the man she wanted, and I could start over. I wanted to give her what she seemed to desire most, a chance to be free. I took immediate steps to separate from her, handing power of attorney to a lawyer because I didn't even want to think about Betsy anymore, let alone speak to her. I planned to give her a generous divorce settlement and move on with my life." Harvey paused, his expression darkening. "I didn't know I'd be robbed or end up in a coma. When I woke up, I didn't remember who I was. Sometimes I wish I'd stayed in that coma. But when my memories came back, they included that night. Betsy says she didn't actually go on a date, but there's no evidence to prove that. As far as I'm concerned, it's just as likely that she went on a date and did sleep with this guy, Doug. Maybe she only changed her story when she realized the social and financial consequences." He leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Now I'm being asked to trust that it was all a joke. How can I live with a woman who thought it was acceptable to break my heart just to get my attention? Every evening, when I come home, I'd have to wonder, will I find a loving wife? Or will I find another betrayal? It would be cleaner to divorce. She and Doug can have their life together, and I can try to move on." The counselor nodded. "It seems there's a lot to unpack here. Let's explore this further." The sessions continued until, finally, Betsy brought Doug to one of them. Doug began nervously. "Harvey, I want to apologize for my involvement in this prank." Betsy assured me it was harmless and that everything would be fine. I was skeptical, but I agreed to help her. That night, she got into my car, and I swear to you, we only drove around the block before we returned to your house. She was shocked to find you gone. Later, we found your phone in your room, which is when we realized you'd abandoned it." He looked Harvey in the eyes. "I stayed with her that night, waiting for you to come back. Most of the time, she just kept talking about how much you meant to her and how stupid our plan was. After a few hours, I left. Once again, I apologize. I shouldn't have gone along with it." The counselor asked, "Harvey, does this explanation change anything for you?" Harvey's expression was unreadable. His words certainly sound sincere, but maybe he's just a good actor. "Harvey," Betsy pleaded, There's nothing more I can do to prove to you that it was just a joke. I'll never make fun of you or do anything like this again. Can't you just trust me? Harvey shook his head. Let's not forget. You lied to me that night. You told me you were going to spend the night with him. How am I supposed to trust you now? Tears filled Betsy's eyes. Harvey, I told you that because I wanted to shock you into fighting for me. For us, I didn't actually go anywhere or do anything. It was a stupid prank, but I didn't mean to hurt you. Harvey's face remained impassive. Regardless of your intentions, you broke my trust. I can't live with someone who thinks cruel pranks are an acceptable way to communicate. I've made my decision. I'll continue with the divorce and move into my own apartment. Betsy's tears fell freely. Harvey, please. But Harvey didn't respond. Harvey, I've told you the truth over and over, Betsy pleaded. Yes, I lied that night and told you I was spending it with Doug. But I didn't do anything. I've said this so many times, and I'm not lying now. I swear I won't do anything like that ever again. Harvey stared at her, his tone cold and measured. So, you lied then, and now you expect me to believe you're not lying now. Next, you want me to trust that you won't lie in the future. How am I supposed to know where the lie is and where the truth is? Betsy, it all comes down to trust. She nodded, tears in her eyes. You're right, Harvey. If we want to get back together, you'll have to trust me. If you can't, I'll agree to the divorce. The counselor interrupted. I have a suggestion. How about a postnuptial agreement? It would stipulate that if Betsy ever lies or betrays your trust again, Harvey, you'd be entitled to all the property, and the divorce would proceed without contest. Betsy, would you be willing to sign such an agreement? Yes, Betsy answered immediately. I'll do it. Harvey hesitated, then said, I think I could try. Betsy rushed to hug him. Harvey didn't reciprocate right away, but eventually, he embraced her lightly. Over time, Harvey slowly reintegrated into their marriage. It wasn't easy, and progress was fragile. It took months before they even shared the same bed again. Their interactions remained cautious and distant at first, but as time passed, they began rebuilding their relationship. They started taking more walks together, working on household projects, visiting their daughters, and even traveling. Their life became more active than it had been before the incident, and Betsy started to feel comfortable at home again. One evening, Harvey called Betsy. Don't cook dinner tonight, he said. We have plans. Before Betsy could ask for details, he added, I have to go now, and hung up quickly. Betsy assumed it had something to do with the reorganization at his job due to the recent merger. Perhaps he had received good news about his position. She didn't press him for details and got ready for what she thought would be a celebratory evening. When Harvey came home, he immediately went upstairs. I'm changing for tonight, he called down to her. Shortly after, the doorbell rang. Betsy opened the door to find a professionally dressed, attractive woman about 10 years younger than herself. Yes, can I help you? Betsy asked, her smile tight. The woman smiled politely. I'm here because of Harvey. We're going out tonight. Betsy froze. The scene reminded her too much of the night she had pretended to go on a date. Her heart sank, and she thought, is this revenge? Is he doing to me what I did to him? An idea formed in her mind. Betsy stepped aside and said, Come in. The woman entered, looking around. You have a lovely home, Mrs. Strickland. Thank you, Betsy replied. Excuse me for just a moment. I need to let Harvey know you're here. She turned and shouted up the stairs. Harvey, your companion is here. His reply was muffled, but she assumed he said he'd be down shortly. As Betsy returned to the living room, she looked at the woman and, without thinking, wrapped her hands around her neck and began to lightly choke her. You husband stealing, she growled. The woman gasped and struggled in shock. At that moment, Harvey rushed down the stairs. Betsy, what the hell are you doing? Betsy released her grip and started laughing. This time, I caught you trying to play a prank on me. What prank? Harvey snapped. This is Amanda Briggs, my new merger manager. Amanda, I am so sorry. I have no idea what's gotten into her. Amanda looked furious. I like to think I work with professionals, people who are sane during and after business hours. If this is what you consider normal, Harvey, you can say goodbye to your new position. I'll be waiting in the car. Amanda, please, let me explain before you make any hasty decisions, Harvey pleaded as she stormed out. Harvey turned to Betsy, his face red with anger. Thank you very much, Betsy. Just when I thought our marriage was back on track, you managed to ruin it, and possibly my job. I'm sorry. I thought, Betsy began. No, I don't want to hear it, Harvey snapped. I need to go and fix this. He grabbed his jacket and ran after Amanda, leaving Betsy sobbing on the sofa. 15 minutes later, Harvey and Amanda returned to the house. Harvey called Betsy downstairs. She reluctantly joined them, her face streaked with tears. Amanda began, her tone softer than before. Betsy, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been so harsh earlier. Harvey explained everything. It turns out you weren't the only one who thought this might be a prank. Betsy looked confused. What do you mean? Harvey took her hands. Amanda and I planned this together. It was a prank, Betsy. We wanted to test if we were really past what happened between us. We didn't expect, well, that, he said, gesturing toward Amanda's neck. Amanda chuckled nervously. I was terrified for a moment, but in hindsight, Harvey's idea for this prank was worth it. Betsy stared at them, processing their words. Slowly, a nervous laugh escaped her lips, which turned into genuine laughter. You mean, this was all a joke? And I fell for it? Yes, Harvey said, smiling. But I think we're even now. Later that evening, the three of them went out for dinner and drinks, sharing stories and laughter. By the time they returned home, the tension had mostly dissipated. Betsy felt a renewed sense of relief and hope for her marriage. While Betsy went to clean up the kitchen, Harvey headed upstairs. As he walked into the bedroom, his eyes landed on something that made his blood run cold. Lying on Betsy's nightstand was his automatic pistol, which was supposed to be locked in the safe. Upon inspecting it, he found a bullet in the chamber and the safety off. His heart sank. What do you think of this story? Would you have handled things the same way? Or would you have done something differently? If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.